Morning warriors, and thank you for joining me on this week's Why Shy Why. Why Shy Why this week is going to take a step back. I want to talk about what was happening in the turn of the century with IT. We had a huge problem, one massive big problem that everyone was concerned about, but it kept being pushed under the rug. And in 2001, a bunch of people got together in a ski resort in Utah and figured out how to fix that problem. Okay, so let's get into it. What was it that was plaguing the whole software industry in the 1990s coming up to 2000? Well, it was this one fact. Software development projects were failing more often than they weren't. I'm talking about huge banks. I'm talking about governments. I'm talking about the biggest technology groups out there, technology companies out there. More than 50% of their projects failed. Wow. The reason that it failed was kind of like unknown to everybody, right? Everybody sort of kept putting it under the rug because it meant lots of money got thrown into tech in the 1990s. And when you have a success rate of, let's say, best case 50%, people don't want to talk about how I just spent $3 million on a 50-50 bet, right? So we kept saying that something was successful, but it actually wasn't. Now, this prompted a group of consultants that were consulting on a different kind of way to build software to get together in 2001. They get together because basically they wanted to ski, but they happened to come up with this idea around the agile way of developing software. And they came up with what's behind me, which is the Agile Manifesto. The agile way of developing software talks about three particular value statements that you can see behind me. Four particular value statements. These four things make the basis of what these guys were trying to achieve. These guys were from different methodologies, right? So oftentimes they were actually competing against each other. Yet they were able to get away from this competitive nature and come up with something that actually everyone in that group was proud of, but also everyone was kind of surprised that, hey, we were able to find some sort of base that everyone's actually agreeing with. So let me quickly go through the Agile Manifesto for you guys. Number one, individuals and interactions over processes and tools. This is kind of one of those things where you don't think of this until you think of things, right? Usually what would happen in the old school world was we would write software in something called a waterfall method. Well, the waterfall was basically a way that you do construction, right? So if you're building a high-rise building, you kind of do, all the walls, and then you do all the concreting, then maybe you do all the bricking, then you do all the, the plumbing, then you start doing all the interior designing. Things happen in a chunk, right? And so software thought, well, we're building something, so let's take the construction metaphor and use the same thing. We called it a waterfall method. What we found very quickly, though, was that waterfall or the construction method didn't work for us. But it was this group of people in 2001 that came up with the manifesto that actually said, well, wait a minute, what we really need to be able to do is we need to look at individuals and we need to look at interactions and figure out what is it about software using that base. I don't really care what kind of computer I'm using or what language it is or anything like that. None of the technical stuff really matters. What matters is getting software in front of users and getting feedback, right? Which is the second one, working software over comprehensive documentation. Again, in the metaphor, what would happen when you're building a building is you get all your architectural drawings done, you get all your engineering done, you get your town planning done, you get your your council approvals done, your zoning and all that. You get a whole bunch of paperwork right at the start and then you start working on the actual building. That's how software started to work. We would have something called a requirements phase. In that phase, we would write down on paper everything that was needed in the software. Then, when that was signed off on, we would throw that at a bunch of developers and say, good luck, we will see you in 12 months' time, or something like that. The problem with that was that we never really knew two things. One, was the development team actually building stuff to spec, like to what we were expecting? Sure, they were building stuff to what was on the piece of paper there, but one, what if that has changed? And two, what if they misinterpret it, right? And that's really easy to do when something's written down. Then the other thing is that how do we know if this thing is actually working? If it's a 12-month project, do we know if it's 1/12 through after 1 month, right? That's the question. No one actually knew how far we were getting. So working software is actually really probably the only, maybe the primary, but probably the only way of actually knowing how far your project is going. Okay, number 3, customer collaboration. This is key. This is something that most developers, including myself, worry about because we're not great communicators, right? Generally speaking, of course. And because of that, we've kind of been the sort of people that love to sit on our keyboards and do our thing and let someone else talk to the business. Unfortunately, that doesn't work because you get this whole whispers problem and things, requirements and specifications change as people talk about it. So now what we're trying to do is come up with something that allows us to collaborate one-on-one, face-to-face with a customer and keep talking to them throughout the development process, allowing us to make sure that all our assumptions are correct and that every time we have a question that we can get it validated or confirmed. Okay. The last one, guys, is responding to changeover following a plan. This is by far probably for me the biggest. What used to happen was you'd get customers, you'd get business reps coming in to a development team, say for a development team that I might be leading, and they'll say, listen, Shai, I know last week I told you that X equals 12 for this particular piece of software, but you know what? I was wrong. It's actually X equals 15. I'm really, 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 really sorry. Can you please fix it? I really hope you can fix it. I'm so sorry. I hope you can fix it. Now, I think about that now and I think, wow, that's like almost trivial in an agile world. But back in a waterfall world, that was tough. Waterfall people will tell you that that's a change in scope or a requirements creep situation. Some sort of change request process has to be taken into account. None of that happens in Agile. Agile, we're ready for change like that. And so people are allowed to make changes, and that allows us to be more competitive in the marketplace as a company, right? So, guys, the Agile Manifesto in 7 minutes. I hope you can stick around and leave a comment for us. Or if you think someone can get some value out of this, please share that with them. Otherwise, guys, I will see you next week.